When you look at the world today, a strange pattern begins to emerge. Nearly every nation on Earth is drowning in debt. The United States alone now carries more than $38 trillion in obligations, the highest level in its history. The European Union carries roughly $14 trillion in debt. Japan is approaching $9 trillion. Even powerful economies like Saudi Arabia, Germany, and China are part of the same story. The numbers may differ, but the pattern remains the same. Everyone owes money. But this leads to a strange and uncomfortable question. If everyone in the world is in debt, then who exactly is the creditor? Because debt is not just a burden sitting on government balance sheets. In many ways, it is the invisible skeleton holding the modern world together. Wars, financial crises, economic booms and collapses, all of them rise and fall on top of this hidden structure. And if you follow this chain of debt far enough, you eventually encounter a deeply unsettling reality. The world is not truly indebted to a single person, country, or institution. The truth is far stranger. In many ways, the world is simply indebted to itself. But that does not mean everyone benefits equally. Today, global debt has surpassed $315 trillion, nearly 3 times the size of the entire world economy. To understand how we reached this point, we need to step back in time, far beyond credit cards, mobile banking, or digital money. The idea of national debt was not born on Wall Street. It was born on the battlefield. The year was 1694. England was at war with France, and the royal treasury was running dangerously low on gold. The king faced a desperate question. How would the war be financed? The solution came from merchants. They lent money to the crown. In return, they received the right to regular interest payments, drawn from future taxes. To manage this new system, the Bank of England was established. It was a quiet revolution in finance. For the first time, a state could spend money it did not yet possess. And for investors, something priceless emerged. A promise from the government guaranteed to be honored in the future. A promise that could be bought, sold, or traded like any commodity. This was the birth of the government bond. The seed of the modern financial system had been planted. France quickly adopted this method. The Netherlands refined it further. The newly independent United States would later use it to fund its revolution and expansion westward. National debt stopped being a mark of shame. Instead, it became a measure of credibility and trust. The ability to borrow became the ability to rule. Empires once conquered land for gold. Now they issued bonds to extract interest. The battlefield had changed. Swords no longer decided outcomes. Balance sheets now held the ultimate power. Fast forward 3 centuries. Debt has become one of the world's largest exports. It flows through nations, banks, and citizens alike. The United States owes $38 trillion. Japan's debt exceeds $9 trillion. Every 100 days, global borrowing grows by roughly $1 trillion. Everyone is in debt. Every bank lends. Every citizen, through taxes, savings, and pensions, is both debtor and creditor. But who exactly holds the other end of the rope? Let's start with the United States. Its debt is not just a national matter, it's a global issue. Of the $38 trillion owed, about half is publicly held, meaning it belongs to investors, not other government branches. Roughly 2/3 of these investors are American institutions, banks, pension funds, mutual funds, insurance companies, and even the Federal Reserve itself. The remaining 1/3, about $9 trillion, sits in foreign hands. Japan is the top holder with around $1 trillion, followed by China with roughly $800 billion. Then come the UK, Luxembourg, and Belgium. So when people say the US owes China, it's only partly true. Roughly 2% of America's debt is held by China. The majority of the debt is owed to America itself. The Treasury issues bonds. Banks and funds buy them. The Federal Reserve often buys them back, creating new dollars in the process. Americans pay taxes that fund the interest on these bonds. That interest then flows back into retirement accounts and investment funds. It's a circular mirror. The debt is real, but the creditor is often the same system itself. And this circularity isn't just American. Japan lends to the US through treasuries. The US lends to Europe via the IMF. Europe lends to developing nations through the World Bank. Developing countries, in turn, lend back to advanced economies by holding foreign exchange reserves and Western bonds. It's a planetary game of hot potato, except the potato is made of promises. Every country holds someone else's IOU. Every promise is secured by another promise. But there's a fourth layer, perhaps the most powerful of all: the markets. Behind every government bond sits a web of institutions. Hedge funds, pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, and central banks manage tens of trillions in assets. These are the true arbiters of credit. They decide which nations can borrow cheaply and which must pay a premium to survive. Their confidence can topple currencies, governments, and entire economies overnight. Democracy decides who governs. Markets decide who survives. And at the pinnacle of this system stands the central bank. Central banks don't just manage debt, they manufacture it. Every time the Federal Reserve or the European Central Bank buys government bonds, new money is created. One balance sheet's liability becomes another's asset. Every dollar in circulation represents a unit of debt somewhere else. There is no such thing as debt-free money. Every coin, every bill, every digital dollar carries an invisible IOU. For decades, this loop has sustained itself through confidence. As long as investors believe governments will pay interest, even if never the principal, the machine keeps turning. But when confidence wavers, chaos follows. In 2010, Greece's government debt became unpayable. Bondholders panicked. Yields spiked. The European Central Bank and IMF intervened. Yet rescue came at a cost: austerity, tax hikes, spending cuts, and mass unemployment. For an entire generation, bailout became another word for sacrifice. In Argentina, repeated defaults turned debt into a national curse. In Sri Lanka, fuel shortages and political collapse followed when foreign currency ran out. When the system breaks, creditors suddenly become visible. The IMF, rating agencies, and anonymous bondholders, the actors who control nations overnight. And yet, even after collapse, the logic restarts. In the 21st century, debt is not meant to be fully repaid. It is designed to be rolled over. Governments don't plan to pay off their debt. Not now, not ever. This isn't a conspiracy, it's policy. When you take a loan, you repay the principal. Governments operate differently. They issue new bonds to pay off old ones. Economists call it refinancing. Interest becomes the real product, the rent charged for stability. The global economy depends on this rent. Like a shark that must keep swimming to breathe, the system must keep rolling debt. The United States will never clear its $38 trillion debt. It will refinance forever. Japan has been rolling over its debt for decades, now exceeding 250% of GDP, yet bond yields remain near zero. Investors aren't waiting to be repaid. They wait to renew the deal. Government debt is the safest collateral in existence. A U.S. Treasury bond isn't a liability, it's an asset, the foundation of global markets. Pension funds hold it. Banks use it as security. Central banks treat it as money. Imagine if Washington decided to pay off every last dollar. Banks and funds would lose their most stable asset. The dollar supply would shrink, triggering deflation and collapse. So governments do the opposite. They keep issuing more debt, not recklessly, but rhythmically. Debt has become the heartbeat of capitalism itself. It flows through every pension, every mortgage, every market on earth. When politicians talk about balancing the budget, they often sell an illusion. The goal is not to eliminate debt, it's to keep it sustainable and desirable. Confidence is not distributed equally. When we say the world owes itself, that's only half the story. Interest payments don't flow evenly. They move upward from taxpayers and workers to institutions and investors. Debt isn't just a transfer between countries, it's a transfer between classes. Global inequality rises alongside global indebtedness. This story isn't new. From households to nations, from nations to the planet, the same logic scales up. Creditors aren't villains, debtors aren't victims. They are two sides of the same engine. The real problem emerges when the engine runs out of fuel. When new borrowing can't keep pace with promises made before. That's when the question, who is the creditor, stops being abstract. It becomes personal. At the top of this global pyramid, there is no single face to blame. It isn't China. It isn't Wall Street. It isn't the IMF. It's all of them. And, in a way, it's all of us. The modern financial system has turned debt into money. Governments issue it. Banks multiply it. Investors trade it. Citizens depend on it. The line between debtor and creditor has blurred beyond recognition. Once, debt meant bondage. Today, it means balance. But if that balance ever tips, we will remember what debt really is, a promise that can't be kept forever.